Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Power on the Polls. Everything started a little bit screwy there with bringing everyone on the panel in. Things had a little technical glitch, but we got everyone in at the last minute. So thank you for joining us. What we're going to be going over this evening, well, not me, but our four great panelists are going to be going over current voting rules and regulations. So, to get started this evening, before we have a lot of material to cover, so we're going to roll right into it. But before we do that, I would love for everyone to introduce themselves and maybe say a bit about yourself, so that people out there in the internet void will feel a little attachment to everyone who's here tonight. I'm going to take myself out of the picture right now and switch over to you guys. And let's see, why don't we get started? Jessica, do you wanna start with being our primary? Who kicks us off tonight?
Sure. So I'm Jessica Backus. I'm the Manitowoc County Clerk. I've been County Clerk since 2019, Deputy County Clerk before that, starting in 2016. And I'm also a Town Clerk for the last 12 years.
Great. Welcome. Who would like to be next?
I can go.
Okay.
Whoever. Hey, there we go. I'm Jamie Olick. I'm the former Manitowoc County Clerk. I was Manitowoc County Clerk from 2007 to 15. And believe me, Jessica's doing a much better job than I ever did. So that's good. I'm the Kiel City Administrator and also the Deputy Clerk for the City of Kiel. I also am appointed by the Wisconsin Elections Commission as the clerk trainer. So I certify new municipal clerks and also chief inspectors on their jobs for running elections in the county.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for being here tonight, Jamie. Would the other Jamie care to go now, so that we get both Jamies in at the same time?
Sure. All right. I'm Jamie Jackson. I am the City Clerk and Human Resources Director for the City of Two Rivers. And I've been in Two Rivers for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I spent about 6.5 years in Kewaunee County municipalities, being their city clerks.
Welcome, and thank you for being part of the two Jamies on the panel this evening. And last but not least, Mackenzie.
I am Mackenzie Reed-Cotto. I am the city clerk for the city of Manitowoc. I've been the city clerk for a little over a year. And before that, I was the deputy clerk for the city of Manitowoc since 2017.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Those are awesome glasses, by the way, Mackenzie. Just saying. Those are cool. Yeah.
I'm fond of them myself.
All right, before we dive in, and we're just going to dive in, I just wanted to remind everyone who's following along tonight, if you have any questions or comments that you want to make, we'll address them after we get through some questions that have been submitted already. Like I said, there's a lot of material to get through, but we're going to do our best to answer questions or comments, and as well as address the material that people have asked us to address already. So, just a reminder, just type it into the comments area on either Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be good to go. So let's just jump right in with the first, biggest, most basic question. How do you register to vote?
I can at least feel the beginning of it. I mean, if you break voter registration down into its extreme component parts first, you got to be qualified, right? So you got to be 18 on or before election day. So in theory, a 17-year-old could register to vote so long as the next election they'll be 18 on or before election day. So I've actually registered 17-year-olds in the past, and they turned 18 in March, and the election was in April, for example. So that's the age requirement. Then you got to reside in the municipality or the municipality that you're going to vote in. So the city of Manitowoc, even though they have like 10 poll locations, right, you're still going to register with the city of Manitowoc. So whether that's, and we'll get into, I'm sure, a little bit later on how to register or where to register, but you're going to register with the municipal clerk in which you reside. So the town, village, or city clerk, right? Or poll workers, if we're on election day, we'll get into that. Another thing is you cannot be a convicted felon on probation. So in Wisconsin, convicted felons can vote so long as they are not incarcerated and they're off probation. Okay. So there is a list that all poll locations have on election day that's called the ineligible voter list. It's also kind of termed the unofficial, like the felon list. And those are people who are currently convicted of a felony who are unable to register to vote on election day. So each poll location has a list like that. And so do the municipal clerks prior to election day. But there's a quote unquote felon list. Anyway, if the person who is a felon then serves their time, off probation, they can then re-register and vote. So we do allow people who are convicted of felonies to vote. Lastly, you got to be a U.S. citizen in order to register to vote. So on their election registration forms, there is a block, I think it's block 10, where basically, actually, no, it's at the very top now, where the person certifies that they are all those things, and that is what is used in order to convict voter fraud, should it not be the case and be found out. So anyway, it's called an election. Let's see here, EL 131. What's that called? My clerk friends. That's the election
voter registration application.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. There we go. I'm going to need help. I can rattle some things off, but I can't do it all. So feel free to chime in. So those are the basic qualifications to vote. Now, there's three different periods that Wisconsin breaks it down into voting on when you can register. There's what's called the regular registration period, which is literally the day after any election day up to 20 days prior to the next election day. So when you think of how our elections are run in Wisconsin, in a typical year, in an odd number year like last year, there are two regularly scheduled elections. There's the February primary, which is the third Tuesday in February, and then there's the first Tuesday in April. So let's just say a person moves into the city of Manitowoc or wherever they move the day after election day in November. They have until the 20 days prior to, if there's a primary, right, in February, to register in the regular period. Now they can do that online, and we'll talk about My Vote later, I'm sure. They could do that by mail, or they could do it in the clerk's office. So there's a few different ways to register like that. The key about online registration, we can get into all that fun stuff when we go to My Vote, your driver's license needs to have the current address on it, because the voter registration database checks against the DOT database. Okay. Anyway, it gets a little complicated. Anyway, 20 days prior to election day is another period. That's called the late registration period. And that is where the person who wants to register to vote must go into the clerk's office in order to register. And again, when we're talking voter registration, there has to be a valid proof of residence. And there's like 11 different items that are listed on the Elections Commission website, maybe 12. I think it's 12 now. But anyway, there's variations on what can be used as proof of residence: utility bills, bank statements, driver's licenses if they're current, those types of documents that will qualify for them to register. And lastly, the last way you can register, the last period for registration, and Wisconsin is really, really good and beholden to this method. It's called election day registration, and that's where you can go to the polls and register. Now, the last stat I saw, and this is like the mid-2010s, almost 75% of all Wisconsinites register at the polls, meaning they walk in, they register, they bring their proof of residence, and then they can vote right at the same place, right? So anyway, those are the three different periods: the regular registration period with with its own rules, the late registration period where you have to go to the clerk's office, or election day registration, which is at the polls. One little caveat in all of this is 3 days prior to each election, so the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday prior to election day, there is no voter registration period. The clerks are basically getting all their stuff together, getting everything all packed up, ready to go, and that there is no voter registration on those 3 days. Other than that, you can always call the clerk and they'll let you know how to register. Yay.
Good job, Jamie.
Yeah. That's too many years of teaching just being spilled out online. So there you go.
Anything that anyone else wants to add on to what Jamie put out there already?
Well, yeah, my vote. I was going to say something about my vote, but we can talk about that when we go there.
Okay. Yeah, we will be getting to my vote, which has been referenced a couple times. We're just going to address a few other things quickly and then head over there, which is a very comprehensive website. I'll be sharing the screen, and everyone will be able to see it who's following along, as well as I'll be directed where to go by our panelists when we do get to that website. One thing that also people wanted to hear about was, and if I can find it, is you hear a lot about absentee voting. How does the process for that work locally? Is there more than one method to it? Is it straightforward? What is the process for absentee voting? And Jamie has officially zipped himself.
He's taken his turn.
Appears to have thrown away the key. So hopefully we can get him back in later. But whoever would like to address that one, go right ahead, jump in.
I can talk about it. That's fine. So absentee voting, first, the person must be registered to vote to be able to apply for an absentee ballot. So there's a couple of ways they can apply for that absentee ballot as well. So they could mail an application, EL 121, along with their photo ID to their municipal clerk, requesting it for a specific election. They could request it for the whole calendar year, or there's a special circumstance where some individuals may be able to check indefinitely confined, which means they are unable to usually make it out of their house for illness, whatever reason, they just are confined to their house. So those people do not need to provide their photo ID, but anybody else applying for an absentee ballot does. And if they've already submitted an absentee request before and have their photo ID submitted to the clerk already, that means it's on file. So if they go to my vote, they just have to request the absentee. Their photo ID would already be on file, so that wouldn't be an issue. And they can request their ballot be mailed to them up until the Thursday before the election. So they can send in an application through the mail, through my vote, and request the absentee ballot be mailed to them. And then they would get it in the mail, fill it out, and hopefully return it by election day for their vote to count. When it comes down to the wire like that, they're taking a chance. Usually they probably want to contact their municipal clerk, because I think the cities have hours where you have in-person absentee voting. And then I believe some villages do as well, but a lot of towns, their clerks are part-time, so they do request that a voter request an appointment with them, and then they'll meet with them for the in-person period to do their absentee voting in the clerk's office. So, and that can take place all the way. So like for this April election coming up, March 15th is the first day that valid absentee ballot requests, the clerks would mail them their absentee ballot all the way up until April 1st, which is the Friday before the election. It depends on what the clerk does. If they say 5 o'clock on that Friday before the election, that's the end of in-person absentee voting, then that's the end of their absentee voting. I know some town clerks would possibly meet with them on the Saturday or a Sunday, depending on how their type E reads. So the type E notice informs the voter how to request their absentee ballots, and how to contact their clerk if need be. So
Just a note about sending photo ID, and you just need to send a copy of your photo ID.
Yes.
And I know I've received a few driver's licenses in the mail, which we always have to get back to the voter, but a copy will be sufficient.
And one thing I'd mention too is I don't know how many cities or villages in the county have like a utility drop box. So if you've been kind of paying attention to the news, especially state news, drop boxes for ballots have now been ruled invalid by the state Supreme Court. So I'm literally in the back of my mind, I'm playing Army right now. I go back tomorrow, back to good old Manitowoc County, but I'm thinking about what I need to put out by our what traditionally was a utility, bill drop-off box outside Kiel City Hall, and making sure that people know that they need to bring their ballot inside and drop it off at the clerk's office in order for us to accept it. So I'm kind of going through that right now in the back of my mind, how to go about that. But anyway, I think that speaks to an interesting part of being a clerk, right? So we deal with election laws all the time. And our job fundamentally as a clerk is to follow whatever the policy is set forth by the legislature or the courts or whoever the authority is that day. And it's literally sometimes that day, because it could get overturned tomorrow by another court or whatever. And this is kind of sort of what, at least in mine, almost the whole clerk arc of my career since the mid to late 2000s, we've been dealing with frequent law changes. And sometimes things like in the past, voter registration would be 10 days for one election. It'd be 28 days residency the next election.
mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of flip-flopping around like a fish on a table, right? It's just you don't quite know what to expect. But as I always tell the municipal clerks and the poll workers, is like, whatever the policy is that day, that's what you do. And that's what we follow. So for the April election, until further notice, we don't accept absentee ballots in our drop-off box. And that's the way it is. So anyway, us on our end of things, we are not policymakers. We're not out to tell, really, we're just there to follow the law at the time. It is the law. And if it changes, then we follow that law. So that's kind of how it works. It's interesting. Keeps things exciting in what would otherwise seem like a very boring sphere of occupation. But it is what it is, right? That's what you do. Someone's got to do it. And you're looking at 3 awesome people who are in municipalities that do it every day. So it's pretty cool.
And another thing is too, that the person themselves has to drop it off with the municipal clerk. Like a husband and wife, a husband can't bring in the wife's ballot. The wife would have to come in and hand in her absentee certificate with her ballot inside for us to be able to accept it.
Jamie, how often, or anyone really, how often does it like rapidly change like you're talking about? I mean, like, I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I wasn't really aware of this. I usually absentee vote early, and that's just what I do. And so I pay attention to the news. I like to think I do anyhow, but it's just like, how often is it that kind of rapid fire change that you're talking about?
Well, April 2020, the Monday before, it changed every hour.
Every hour?
Pretty much. We were informed from WEC almost on an hourly basis as to different changes and flip-flopping back and forth. And it kept you on your toes.
That's incredible. I mean, do people outside of the clerk's offices know about this? I mean, is it general knowledge that's released to the public ever? Are we breaking a story?
No, that was definitely in the news where the state Supreme Court overturned drop-off boxes. It was definitely on a few of my news feeds, and but that's go for it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that Dropbox, I think that came through on January, was it 24th where they changed it back saying they'll allow it for the February election. And I had just dropped off all my absentee ballots in the mail for my townspeople saying drop boxes were not allowed. 2 hours later, it changed saying, yep, drop boxes are allowed for this election.
And now they're not again as of last week.
Correct.
Wow.
Yay.
Wow, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
your job really isn't nearly, it's much more exciting than you're letting on, I think.
When you work with the public,
Very
it's always exciting. You know
Yeah.
that.
So another question, and this is about absentee in person voting. Can you register at that time as well? Like you
Yeah.
could the day of?
Yep. You can register up until 5 p.m. the Friday before the election.
Just got to make sure you have that proof of residence. Bring the right documents, and you're fine. Yep, you can register and then vote right on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And this is just my question. This is not anyone else's question. But what would you say the breakdown is? Do more people absentee vote? Do more absentee in person? Absentee through the mail? Or is it still preferred to on election day vote in person?
I would say a majority of people still go on election day, vote in person. At my town clerk job, a lot of mail absentees. Nobody really meets in person unless they just get a phone call saying, "Oh, I got to hop on a flight tomorrow for business." So if they call me, I can meet them out at the town hall to work with them with their in-person absentee. With the cities, it might be different.
Yeah, we have, for the city of Manitowoc, we have quite a few absentee and in-person absentee voters. I think for February, I would say maybe a little less than half voted absentee, either by mail or in-person absentee, and then a little more than half at the polls.
I think it's
What about
important to note the social effects too. Like prior to COVID-19, a lot of people would go to the polls and do it that way. All of a sudden, when we're at like April of 2020 and it was just hitting, there was a lot, and going forward into that August and November, there was a much higher amount of absentee ballots that you would have otherwise saw in like a 2016 or 2012 or something like that. So people did choose to vote absentee at higher rates during COVID-19.
I think I want to say in November of 2020 in my town, over half the town voted by absentee, or was that April of 2020? You know, I had, I think, 899 absentee ballots for one of them. And I just wanted to hit 900, but I couldn't.
We had for November 2020, the city of Manitowoc had over 10,000 absentee ballots.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a big one.
How about in Two Rivers?
I was not here for November 2020. I started the day after that election.
You were smart.
The municipality that I was in, we had over 50% absentees as well. I know there were a lot of them here. I want to say it was like 3,000, which is nearly half of our registered voters.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it was a lot.
Wow. Is it okay if I throw a question at you from the public that somebody following along had a question about? And their question is, Nancy wanted to know, will there be someone to come to the curb to pick up, I believe, instead of us, pick up a disabled voter from their car? So.
Yep. I mean, curbside voting is part of state law. Yep. If someone shows up at the polls and they either have an assistant come in and say, "Hey, I got someone who can't make it in," or what have you, curbside voting is definitely a thing in Wisconsin. It's part of our election laws. We have poll workers who would go out and help that person vote and do it confidentially. Usually there's a little envelope or a slip or something that like a manila folder that the ballots put in. So it's kept confidential, but yeah, no, the curbside voting is a thing. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a thing on election day and for in-person absentee voting.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for your question, Nancy. One more question, which leads nicely into my vote, is if someone is new to an area, what is the best way for them to find out where their polling place is?
They can contact the county. We'll help them figure it out.
Or contact the clerk. I mean,
Contact
Yeah.
town, village, city clerk, whatever. your
If they,
municipal
if
government
they
is.
know who their clerk is, contact them as well. Yeah.
The city of Manitowoc has a really nice interactive map on our website where folks can actually just type in their address, and an aldermanic map of the city will pop up, and it'll tell you exactly who your alder is, where you vote, what ward and district you're in. There's quite a few ways folks can find that information.
For Manitowoc, is that website? The website is www.manitowoc.org, correct?
Yep. Yep. And then if you go to under the Common Council, meet your alderperson, there's a link that says check out this interactive map, and that'll take you right there.
Great. Same with Two Rivers, I would imagine.
We do not have an interactive map.
Sorry, I
We
spoke
were
too
bringing
soon.
my
Yes, department.
We're working on a new website, so maybe we'll have some features like that in the future. But they can call me, obviously, or go to My Vote, which is a really great resource for a lot of things election related.
Well, since you put it that way, that provides a perfect segue into My Vote. So let me bring that up and share the screen. This will just take a moment.
In Kiel, you just Google me, by the way, and you get to read all sorts of fun stuff. So there you go. But I'll get you all educated on how to vote.
All right, so let me bring My Vote up there. I'll leave you guys on the sidebar for now, but just direct me where you would like me to go on this super informative website.
Well, I think all the tabs, personally, I was kind of actually tooling around on it earlier today. I think all the tabs are kind of sort of important. It is the public facing voter information website for the state, and I don't think any site does better than this. So yeah, the tabs. If you look at the tabs,
You can scroll up a little bit, Tim, to those
Certainly.
gray squares.
There we go.
There you go.
yeah, there we go. So if you just click on My Voter Info,
All right.
this is one of those things where I don't know who we're going to look up. I don't think there's any test person necessarily. But anyway, the My Voter Info tab is kind of cool if you're into elections.
Yeah, so if you're a registered voter, you can go in and put your name and date of birth in. You'll see your elected officials. You'll see who your clerk is. You'll see your voter participation, so what elections you voted in. Just kind of each individual voter's comprehensive snapshot of all things voting for them.
Is this just within Wisconsin, or does it go back if you've lived outside of the state as well?
No, I believe this is a Wisconsin-based website. It's created by the Wisconsin Election Commission.
Okay. I mean, I don't particularly have anything to hide. Should I just type my name in?
Go for it.
Yeah, if you want to try and keep your date of birth though, kind of sort of confidential. It's one of those little pieces of info. I don't know if you can.
How can I do it because it is required?
Can you scroll up?
Scroll so it hides.
Yeah, scroll up. Oh, other way.
Other
the
way.
other up.
Other up.
There you go.
Sorry. So where should I?
Yep, and then
right
go to
here.
search in those search boxes, and go ahead and type in your name and birthday down below, Tim.
This one.
So-
There you go. Yep, right over there.
You know, that's what I was saying is that if you search
now
here, it does require your date of birth.
Yeah. And you'll have
that-
to have that on the screen to be able to hit search.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
I'll
So
close
there's no
my
way.
eyes.
Not that I mind telling everyone how old I am, but you're probably right. I shouldn't just throw it out there randomly. But it does seem like there's a great deal of information, like the search by name.
Mhm.
Should we just go over all the tabs?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next up, we have find my polling place.
So if somebody's looking for their polling location, this is a great place to go. So you could just put in your address and then hit search, and then it'll show you your clerk and your polling location.
You want to do the library? Let's see if you lived at the library. Where does the
If
library
I lived
go?
at the library,
Yeah.
I will just put that in right here. And if I lived at the library, we couldn't find the address you entered.
Try 900 Quay Street because I searched City Hall before we got on here and it came up.
All right.
I'm pretty sure I know where that votes, but we'll see.
It's not City Hall.
All right, my polling place. If you lived at City Hall, which I'm sure
Oh.
Mackenzie feels like she does sometimes,
Especially.
Yeah.
your polling place is the Manitowoc Public Safety Building, the voting room at 911 Franklin Street in Ward 5. And the hours that they're open on Election Day, April 5th, 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. So, I mean, this really, the website is fantastic. What an amazing resource. It really spells everything out for you very easily. And if you didn't know how to get from City Hall to the Public Safety Building, it really points it out very clearly on the map.
And then if you look to your left on that sidebar there, you'll see Mackenzie actually is the city clerk for Manitowoc, and that's who you contact to know how to vote.
That's true right here.
It's on
This
the
is
internet.
not-
It must be true.
Yeah.
This is not an actress that we have hired to play. This is the real clerk for Manitowoc. It was not easy to secure her services, by the way.
The glasses are what did it in the audition. I will say that.
Yeah, they really did. They
Fun
stood
fact,
out
let
above
me
everyone
see.
else's glasses. So,
If you scroll back down, Tim,
sure.
it does have more information like what to expect on election day. So it tells them
Oh, yeah.
there's a voting guide right there for them as well. And then other ways to vote, polling place accessibility.
Yeah, other ways to vote. Request an absentee ballot, for example, is on here. The automatic absentee ballots.
And then you'll see the bottom one is the indefinitely confined.
And then also polling place accessibility, which is great. I mean, this really is just a wealth of information.
And normally under that, what's on my ballot? So because the February election, clerks are still entering their information into our system or WisVote system, then they have till March 11th to enter stuff for the April election. And once they close their checkpoints on their end, that's when the ballots will populate, showing them what would be on their ballot.
Okay.
So some people may wonder why there isn't a ballot up yet, and it is because there is a time frame that we have to wait for certain things to fall into place to be able to upload that ballot into the system.
Typically, when do you think that would be available? The information would be on this website?
Usually by the time the absentee ballots are going out.
Okay. And let me just pop this up since we're going on there on the screen. The URL to get there is myvote.wi.gov. Very easy to remember. I'll leave that up, while we're looking at my vote, because just in case anyone wants to copy it down, it's very easy to remember. So shall I move on to the next? Well, what's on my ballot won't be there yet.
You can still click on it and see what pops up. So there, because you're just entering an address versus being in your voter information, it's asking you for more info so they can get you the correct ballot to view when it's available.
Right. You can update your name and address right from here.
Yeah. So the first thing they're going to do is verify whether or not you're actually registered. So you type in your name, address, date of birth. And the tricky thing about this sometimes is, like, Tim, is your name actually Timothy?
It is.
Okay. So you were probably registered as Timothy. Some people, like, I would imagine you might start by typing out Tim in there in your last name and date of birth, and it may not find you right away because you're registered under your full name. So that does make a difference sometimes.
Whatever's on your driver's license, that's what
Right.
you want to enter in there.
Yep.
And there are actually 2 Tim Gadzinskis in Manitowoc. You know, so I don't know if the other person is registered under Timothy or not, but I know that I am.
Yeah, it'll pull through on your date of birth.
Okay, right.
And if you're sure that you're registered to vote and you're putting in your name and your date of birth and it's saying we're not finding this voter, you can always give your clerk a call too. Sometimes there are typos when date of births get entered or transposing numbers, something like that. So you can just give your clerk a call if you're like, hey, I'm trying to update my address and it's telling me I'm not registered to vote, but I know I am. Give us a call and we can look and see why you might not be finding your voter record.
And then you can just outright register to vote here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both ways, either way you do it, if you are registered to vote, it pulls you through under your old address, you entering your new address, it ends up merging your voter record. So that's
Yep.
Go ahead.
Absolutely correct. The key on this one, though, is that your driver's license needs to be current in order to register online. Because it's checking that the voter registration database is checking against the DOT database. And in order for that to occur, everything needs to match. So that's how we do online voting in Wisconsin. Or online registration.
And you can actually update your address with the DMV online. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go into the DMV to get your updated license. But so you can update your address with the DMV and then register kind of at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. And if it's, during the open registration period, you'll be able to register right through here, and your municipal clerk will get an email saying, hey, this person registered. If it's during the late registration period, I believe it actually tells you need to print out the application, the voter registration application, and bring it to your municipal clerk to be able to register you with your proof of residence. And they can also bring it on the day of election and just use it. And that way their registration form's already all filled out.
Absentee voting by mail. Again, very similar. I mean, everything really is based on your name and date of birth and address in certain circumstances here, correct?
Yep, because they need to they need to verify you're a registered voter to be able to request that absentee ballot.
So this is probably the easiest way to request an absentee ballot by mail too. I mean, it walks you through everything that's on the paper form, just kind of clicking next, going through all of the different screens. It's really easy to do on a mobile device. If you need to upload your photo ID, it'll let you just, once you get to that part of requesting your ballot, it'll say, hey, do you want to allow this to access your camera? You can take a picture of your driver's license. And it updates into like our end of the WisVote system instantly. So I've had people on the phone walk them through the process of requesting their ballot. I'm like, okay, yep, I see your request in, your photo ID is here. It looks great. And they're good to go, kind of like that.
Wow. Technology actually working, which is great. Track my ballot. So here. So this is when you have an absentee ballot, correct?
So if you look at the bullets, those are all the different checks that a municipal clerk needs to click in this system. Has it been received and processed? Yep. Was my ballot sent? Yep. Did I get it back? Yep. So a voter at any point in this whole process here can kind of see what the status is of their absentee ballot. And, it's some administrative work to do it, right? But this is how we communicate to the voter, what part of the process are you with getting your ballot, or have we received it, blah, blah, blah. So that gives some reassurances, I guess, to both the clerk and the voter on where everybody's at in this whole process with by mail absentee.
I love how clearly it's spelled out too.
Mhm.
I mean, on here, and you're just, backing up by what you're saying is that it really informs you on the process as well, a voter on the process as well.
Agreed.
And then vote absentee in person. Although we've kind of gone over this, it lets you, much like just voting in person, it lets you know where to go to vote absentee in person, correct?
Yep.
That is super informative. And I'm going to pop up that URL again really quickly. Sorry, it does cover your face, Jamie, for which I apologize.
Some people appreciate that. Don't worry.
I will not comment. But myvote.wi.gov, just an absolute wealth of information for everything from where you can vote to register to vote, updating your name and address. And it's all spelled out very clearly. I'm going to just switch briefly to the larger, so it takes up the entire screen. But just what we've been going over, it is so easy and user-friendly to navigate this website. And it's just a wealth of information for registering to vote. And I would like to mention at this point that the League of Women Voters today dropped off, if you can't see the screen clearly, but the League of Women Voters, and this was with myvote.com also, they dropped off a number of useful, easy to follow literature that you can just stop by Manitowoc Public Library. It's right at the service desk. You just pick it up, like where you go to check out a book. It is immediately to the left of the person that you would talk to. And it has everything from business cards to like something that's about the size of a table tent, but not a whole lot bigger than that. And it spells out exactly what you can do in My Vote as well. So I will turn to your expertise, panelists, again. Is there anything else you would like to explore on My Vote while we're here? Or do you think we've fairly covered the bases?
I think we covered most of it.
Okay. But again, I encourage anyone who has any questions, there's just so much information you can find out here very easily when you're not sharing, when you don't have to share your birth date with a great internet audience. There's just so much you can find out here about specifically how the job of registering and voting gets done. So excellent for sharing this with everyone. I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. And then we had a couple more questions come in, which leads really nicely into what was actually next on the list. Before we get to the questions, though, a comment that the guests are really clear and you're working well. Thank you for doing your job so well. So a compliment for all of you. And now back to the questions. And this really ties into things specifically for Manitowoc and Two Rivers that we thought would be a good idea to talk about regardless. And this was, are people voting at their old or new districts based on the new districting maps? There was also a comment about going to the City of Manitowoc interactive map, like Mackenzie had brought up.
Thanks, Charles.
And the new districts are in effect, according to Tove as well. So he backs up what you have to say. But are people? I would imagine that people would be voting in the new districts based on the redistricting. So should we go? Oh, who would like to go first? Manitowoc or Two Rivers?
Manitowoc will go first.
All
Sorry,
right,
Jamie.
then Manitowoc.
Yeah, so the new districts are in effect. We did have a couple districts that changed pretty substantially. So if you didn't vote in February, you may want to hop on the city's website or give our office a call and just to make sure you know where to go and vote for April and going forward.
All right. And Jamie, the spotlight is yours.
Perfect. So yes, of course, you're voting in your new district here too, and it's a little more crazy in Two Rivers because along with the redistricting, we decided to decrease our total number of polling locations from 4 down to 2. That's a permanent change, and it goes into effect in 2022, so starting in April. Previously, we had 4 polling locations, one at Grace Church, one at St. Peter the Fisherman Parish Center, one at City Hall, and one at the Community House. And we have chosen to remove 3 of those, keep the one at St. Peter the Fisherman, which is on Mishicot Road, and add a new one at Abundant Life Church, which is on Roosevelt Avenue and also accessible off of Memorial Drive. So that will be a change for a lot of people. So along with redistricting, many of them are moving anyways, even if they didn't change wards. So wards 1 through 5 will be at St. Peter the Fisherman, and wards 6, 7, and 8 will be at the Abundant Life Church. We made that change for a variety of reasons. One of which, I guess the main one, is accessibility and parking. Previously, when we had elections at City Hall or specifically the Community House, especially during the daytime when people are working at those locations, there's very little room to park and get into the building. Also, the main points of entrance were going up or down 8 to 10 steps. So it's not great for accessibility. Our new locations are very easy access, lots of parking. Yes, they are churches. We received lots of inquiries about why we picked churches, and the primary reason we did that is for accessibility reasons. So.
And these are listed on your website as well?
Yes, the new ward maps are on our website. You can find them on WisVote. You can stop in and ask us or call us about it. We're all briefed on where to go. So.
Awesome. Anything from the other Jamie or Jessica regarding the new polling places and the redistricting?
Not really. I do agree with Jamie though on the churches. I had to go to Mackenzie's, one of her polling locations, and that was really nice in a church. It was huge, open area, and it was warm. It wasn't cold like normal polling locations.
And Kiel remained the same. We have 1 poll location for the entire city. Same place, next 10 years, doing good.
So there's another question that's come in. Thank you for the redistricting. And the main thing is I would say check the city websites, check My Vote, just to absolutely nail it down. I did also want to bring up, in case for anyone watching or for the people on the panel, this program tonight, since we're doing it as a live stream on Facebook and YouTube, it will be on YouTube and Facebook forever. So if you know anyone who wasn't able to watch this evening, but is still getting all this very useful and specific information, just direct them to Manitowoc Public Library's Facebook page or our YouTube channel, and they'll be able to catch this at their leisure, whatever works. But here's another question for you, which I just love the sound of the question. What happens after the polls close?
All the work. I mean, well, first of all, the polls are done at 8 p.m. However, they're still open to the public. So you'll note in a lot of, usually it's an April or a November type election where campaigns will oftentimes send people to poll locations, or candidates can show up as well. And in some cases, the candidate, you'd swear, as the tabulators spitting out their thermal paper with all the tallies on, I think their nose is about an inch away, waiting for their office to pop up and see how they did, kind of thing. But that is open to the public to go to the poll location and kind of see how, in particular, the tallies are wrapped up. That's what everybody's always interested in. And then there's a lot of paperwork that occurs that night. You got to report your results to your municipal clerk, county clerk, school district clerk. I mean, there's a lot of different entities involved, as you're probably aware, in all these elections, and you definitely got to make sure you do that before you leave. So that's always an important part of what we do. And then in our particular county, the next day, I mean, ballots and certain materials end up at the county typically. And then, I mean, there's a lot of administrative stuff. When you sign the poll book, that goes back to the municipal clerk's office, and someone actually goes through on all those barcodes. You'll note there's a barcode next to your name in the poll book, and someone's got to scan those in. And what's cool is you kind of get to see the whole system at play, because when they scan your name, when you vote on election day, and then the clerk has, I think is it 45 days? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, it's 30. Has 30 days to go through the poll book and record those votes. We were just talking about my vote. You'll see when the municipal clerk does that, it uploads into that system, and all of a sudden you go on my vote that we just saw, and you'll see, yeah, hey, I kind of quote unquote got credit for voting for that election. You'll actually see that posted. So there's all of that, and in certain elections, in particular general elections, the Wisconsin Elections Commission does audits of every single type of voting equipment. Five iterations of the same type of equipment. So let's say Manitowoc County, which they do, has different election equipment than Sheboygan County, which sometimes will have a different type of election equipment than Calumet. So anyway, the state has this big list of all the different types of election equipment. And what they do is take those different types of election, those communities that have that different election equipment, pick 5 at random, and then literally go out to the field, go to those towns, villages, or cities, whatever they picked, and then they will actually audit the equipment to ensure that the votes were tallied correctly. And I think that's a very important part of when we're talking about tabulators and voting, election security and machines and things like that. After each general election, the Elections Commission actually goes out and audits and redoes that election to make sure that the tallies that come through that tabulator, they'll hand count the tallies as well on the ballot, and they have to match, and they always match. But I think that's an important post. It's called a post audit, or an audit of the general election, and that's how we know that our voting equipment is working properly. So that's an important piece as well. So yeah, the election day is over for voters. It's like, oh yeah, hey, that was easy. Hopefully I just walked in, voted, left. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done after the election night is over.
And you said it update, like, is it fairly instantaneous the way it updates on My Vote once it's entered? Is it all tied into each other?
Yep. So as soon as the clerk scans that poll book, which could be any time within that 30-day period now. So it's the next day after election day. They got 30 days to we call it binking because it makes a little beep sound. It's almost like a grocery scanner type of thing with a little wand where you go down and you enter in those votes. And those are paper poll books now. Some communities like a Manitowoc, you bums, they get to upload all that information almost instantaneously. Seriously, they are so lucky. I tell you, in the big scheme of things, that's saving a lot of time for them. And Mackenzie, do you do registrations on the electronic poll books?
Yes, we do.
They got it way too good over there. Yeah. But anyway, no, that's what's cool about it is she can just take the poll books from her 10 poll locations, upload everything into the system. Boom, you're done. Life is good. So that's kind of cool.
A couple more questions, and please remember, anyone following along, if you have more questions, type them into the comment section, and we'll obviously get to them. Here's one that come in earlier. Who are the best people to contact regarding election policies and legislatures? It seems like, to an extent, people think it would be you, but that isn't really the case, correct?
Well, no. So for policies and things like that, clerks really have no control over what the rules are on election day outside of ... So each clerk association, like Jessica is part of the Wisconsin County Clerks Association, the WCCA, and I'm sure that Jamie and Mackenzie are part of WMCA, which is the Wisconsin Municipal Clerk Association. They each have some version of like a legislative committee that those associations advocate typically for policies that would make a clerk's life a little easier in the big scheme of things. But as far as getting into like super nitty gritty things like, oh, I think the absentee ballot period should be 100 days before the election instead of like 48, all those types of things, those are best left to legislators. And really, your state senator, state assembly person, the representative, those are the ones who create and modify policies. And those are the ones who have true control over how we vote, when we vote, those types of questions. Ease of access, not ease of access, or whatever the deal is, that's really up to the legislature. And then we just follow the policy on the day that the policy is, that type of thing. And mixed in there, of course, is the courts, as we talked about, the state Supreme Court just invalidated drop-off boxes. So it's incumbent on us and actually the Elections Commission just to make sure that clerks know what the rules are when they are, and we just follow what it is.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate that, your state representatives would be the people to contact. By and large, election laws are largely governed by or unique state by state. So your state representatives would be the folks that have control over that.
Great. All right. Another question. What is an election inspector and how does someone become one? Jamie has once again decided to lose the key to his mouth. So I turn to any of the other three panelists for the answer for this.
So election inspectors are the individuals that you see working the polls on election day. So you have your probably about 4 election inspectors, 1 chief inspector for a total of 5. Depending on the municipality, the clerk can staff how she sees fit or he sees fit. But yeah, you have 1 chief inspector and then the rest are election inspectors. And someone becomes an election inspector by contacting their municipal clerk and saying, hey, I would like to be an election inspector.
And then is there a vetting process?
It depends on the municipality.
That's a loaded question.
I didn't mean to ask a loaded question. I really didn't.
Yeah. No, a lot of municipalities are more than willing to accept election inspectors, more election inspectors, because sometimes it's hard to find them. And the more the merrier, I think, because then you could do split shifts versus full days, because it does get to be a very long day for someone to work. But yeah, they just contact their municipal clerk. There's even a section on the voter registration form saying, would you like to be an election inspector, that somebody could check yes or no. And that way the clerk could contact them to talk about the possibility.
And I only bring up loaded question because you want someone who's highly organized and detail oriented to be an election inspector. I mean, if we were to go through that election registration application, there's like 12 sections to it. And you got to be insanely detail oriented to make sure that everything is done correctly. Poll books. You need to make sure that both sets of poll books match, right? You got to be super on your game in order to work on the polls. Now, I don't want to discourage anyone from working at the polls, but basically, and we do have a shortage statewide and the average age of poll workers continues to increase. We have a lack of younger people who are getting into poll worker type work. But I only say that. I say it's a loaded question only insofar as you just got to make sure you're very organized, and the clerk will train you. Their training is provided. You just need to understand English, be 18 or older, and then there also are allowances for high school students to serve as poll workers. 16 or 17, a 3.0 average, and then the parent and the principal sign off on a form, and that person can go and work at the polls at their town, village, or city on election day. The other thing I will say, along with poll workers generally, is there are county-wide poll workers now. So in Kiel, we could have someone from Two Rivers working in Kiel. So it doesn't have to just be the municipality that you live in anymore. There's a law change about 4 or 5 years ago that made it county-based as far as poll workers are concerned.
Yeah. And I am happy they did that, because at that same time, I had 3 of my poll workers that lived in the town of Manitowoc Rapids move into the city of Manitowoc. And I did let them know you could still work at the town. And they were happy to. They actually still come out and are poll workers for me. So.
And Tove wanted me to pass along that they have information sheets available at the polls in Manitowoc for parties interested in becoming an election inspector. So while you're voting, you can also, if you're interested, you can also find out more information that way. Thank you, Tove. All right. Now, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. Continue online. I just wanted to ask, and this is just me because I'm nosy, but you make it sound like in many ways your job is very cut and dry. So, like, what is as clerks for this type of thing, and being involved with this, what is has anything really ever outlandish? What's the most interesting thing that you didn't expect to see happen? If there is anything, there might not be anything. I was fascinated by the fact that the way the laws changed and how that was like a revolving door with some things. But I just wondered if anything, like day of, like the most interesting thing that's ever happened to any of you. Or if there's nothing, you can say there's nothing. Or if it's a bad question, tell me that.
I have a situation where it kind of matches, ironically, at the moment. But there was when you join the military, and you end up serving overseas, serving wherever you serve, different states, and if you never really change your residency, it's still whatever you left. It could be 25 years later. Whatever the residence was where you left in Wisconsin, that's your official voting residence, as long as you never registered anywhere else. Well, it turns out this person's house burned down. And so they never rebuilt the house. They never reestablished a residence there. So it was an address that really didn't exist anymore. And so I had a question from a clerk. What do I do with this? I mean, I'm continuing to send out absentee ballots for a residence that doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Ask the elections commission, and that's the address that you use, even though it doesn't exist anymore. So that I thought that was kind of interesting. Another one, it comes from one of my county clerk friends. She was over on Alaska, and it varies different places how they do in-person absentee voting. So you go to the clerk's office typically, and that's where you go, you get your ballot in your envelope. You might go to a voting booth. In Kiel, we send them to the council chambers, and they vote in there. Whatever the deal is, it's somewhere confidential and private. So anyway, there was the typical like voting booths that you'd see on election day, but out in the hallway, right? So it's on Alaska, and this young person walks in, first-time voter, gets the ballot, goes out to the voting booth, and a couple of minutes later comes back and tells the clerk, like, hey, this pen isn't working. And the clerk is confused. She's like, all the pens out there are working for sure, et cetera, et cetera. So she follows the person over to the voting booth, and it turns out the person was using a glue stick to seal the envelopes as the marker for their ballots. Like, oh, okay, well, obviously first-time voter here. That's probably not going to work. Further, that'll gum up the voting machine when it's stuck in. But anyway, so there's all sorts of funny, crazy, cute little stories like that. And like I say, public service is awesome. I love it. And but you do deal with the public, and the public can be some crazy characters sometimes, and I appreciate that. It keeps things interesting, and it is what it is, right? But that's where you get those little bits of enjoyment out of otherwise. And it's true, it is a very detail-oriented type of job. I mean, there's so many steps. I mean, the election administration manual itself is like 250 pages. The election day manual itself is almost 200 pages. It's a lot of different steps and a lot of things to know. And that's why when you've got like a Mackenzie, a Jessica, and a Jamie running around, it's like, thank goodness our elections are in their good hands. And that is how I look at my ceiling fan at night and sleep well. It's like in Manitowoc County, we're doing it well and we're doing it right. I truly believe we can have confidence in our elections because of those three characters and all the 30 that really serve our communities in our county. They're all good. And I'm always impressed. And I always, when I teach, I say the standard of a good election, clerks or chief inspectors or poll workers, is that the public is reading who won the election the next day, not what was screwed up or how it was administered or anything like that. You're reading about a mayor or a county executive or a judge or, state senator, whatever it is. You're reading about that and not what was all jacked up the day before. So I think that's important that we at least in the time I've been here, we've been very good on all of our processes in our county.
Well, I have to pat you on the back there too, Jamie. We learned from you, or at least I did.
I did too.
Me too.
Well, we all have fun, don't we?
Yes.
This is Pepsi, promise. There's nothing in here. Not yet. It is getting close to 7 now, right?
It definitely is. That feels like a great way to bring this to a close. Thank you so much, both Jamies, Mackenzie, and Jessica, for the wealth of information. And I'm gonna bring myself back into the picture just briefly, even though I'm the least interesting, but the most bearded of everyone here. I have always been a huge fan of voting. And when I was a kid and I got to vote with my mom, that is the one thing that I really miss is the old voting machines. I mean, I know this way is probably, the way we do it now is way easier and far more streamlined. But I miss all the levers and I miss the curtains. It was kind of Wizard of Ozian, I always felt, and it almost felt like you were part of a secret society, but you weren't. The secret society was democracy. Surprise. But I always loved it, and thank you so much for sharing all the information, the stories. It was honestly awesome having you here tonight. I love having these panel discussions. So thank you to all 4 of you. I'm going to make one final plug for a library program that's coming up next Monday. And I think the people following along would be interested in this. It is our next installment of the Great Decisions lecture series. And next week, we'll be talking about changing demographics, both nationally and globally. And our speaker is fantastic. It's Elise Cohen, who teaches at UWGB, all 3 campuses with Manitowoc, Green Bay, and Sheboygan. So that is coming up next Monday. It's online in this same kind of format. There is not any in-person. It's all virtual. And it's on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. And again, thank you to Jamie, Mackenzie, and Jessica for being here tonight and making yourself available. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for suggesting that we do this and helping to put this together and gathering such a great panel. And on that note, have a great night. go to My Vote Wisconsin, which is myvote.wi.gov. All the information is there. Register to vote. Vote. Voting is so important. It is so crucial. So please participate in the process. And it's easier than ever with great clerks like this, and with the resources we have at My Vote Wisconsin. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and have a great night, everybody.